Hello, welcome to another Business of Trucking video. Had somebody recently ask a question about how do I lease on an owner operator to my carrier here. Just a small company, and I got like a family member or a son that wants to lease on as an owner operator. How do I do that? So we're going to talk about that today. But first, I'm not going to get into how much you should pay, whether it's a good idea, or you know all that lease purchase stuff, good or bad. I don't. This is just the mechanics of, hey, if you want to lease somebody on your company, this is what you need to do to make it happen, to be compliant, to be legal, and the mechanics of it. Okay, all that other stuff is debatable. You can pay whatever you want, work it out between yourselves. I don't care. Um, Lease purchase, that's for you guys to decide. Okay, we could do another video on that later. Some of the finer points of that. This is just how to lease on an owner operator. Okay, there are many similarities between this and hiring a company driver, so we could do another video about that later. There's a lot of overlap here, so we'll go through that as we go about what's maybe some of the differences are. One of the things I would say right off the bat is there's been a lot of debate and discussion over the years about owner operators and leased on and independence, what constitutes an owner operator versus a company driver. And it leaves out a whole big part of this picture to where somebody is independent, they're an owner operator, lease operator, whatever the hell you want to call them. That's semantics. But it kind of avoids the other side of it where the carrier is largely responsible, almost entirely still responsible for everything about that owner operator in the same way they would be as a company driver. So, the rules say, to be considered an owner operator independent, you have to have this level of independence and, refuse loads, this and that. But there's this whole other side of it here where that carrier is entirely responsible for you. So you're required to be completely responsible for somebody who can, theoretically disobey what your rules are, right? Because it violates their independence. So there's a whole quandary here of that is sometimes hard to mentally overcome, but we do the best we can, and a lot of that can be, you know, dealt with through just conversations with the people you choose to bring on. Of, hey, this is this, you're this is that, but let's have some agreements here and come to an understanding of the whole thing we're trying to achieve here, right? So that is I guess an unintended consequence. They've tightened up on what an owner operator can be, but they've not loosened any of the restrictions and responsibilities on the carrier, but yet you're still required to provide them that independence. It's a difficult situation to be in. So after that, I'm just going to go through. I made myself a checklist here anytime I bring somebody on, and some of these things we're going to skip over. Just piddly stuff like, make sure they have a tire gauge and load bars and a kingpin lock, a padlock. So we'll skip over all that stuff. That's stuff any driver should have, and you can decide what you want your drivers to carry in their truck. But I'm basically going to go down this list here, and some of it might not be what you're looking here, but it's going to be complete. This is everything, just about everything that I do, and I cover my bases pretty good here. So let's just start with one of the differences between an employee and an independent contractor, owner operator. I'm just going to say owner operator for the purposes of this video. You can call it what you want. Is workers' comp insurance. You're not required to carry work comp on owner operators. They are considered their own company. They're self-employed, right? So you don't have to carry work comp on that. Now, one thing that I'm a stickler on is if somebody contracts to me and they say, hey, I want to build a fleet, I want to lease on more trucks to you and hire my own drivers. Okay, we can do that, but there's going to be some work comp involved here, because if they're going to lease on more trucks and put an employee driver in that truck, you have to make sure that they carry work comp on those drivers. I don't give a damn what your theory is on 1099 drivers and all that, because if their driver gets hurt, they're coming back on you in your workers' comp for their injury. Your insurance company will insist on this, and this is something you need to make sure of. Okay, you could get wrecked financially by this. So if they want to hire drivers as employees, they have to provide their own workers' comp to those employees, and they have to provide you documentation of it. First, let's talk about permits. You're essentially going to treat this truck like one of your own for permit purposes. You're going to add them to your Kentucky inventory, New Mexico permit, Oregon permit, New York permit, provide them an IFTA. Now they are allowed to get their own IFTA and IFTA account. Should they choose to do that, they have to provide you with copies of the returns that you must keep in your records. So make that clear. There's going to be a box in the contract that they can sign off on that. You cannot legally require them to be on your IFTA. But like I said, they have to provide you copies if they're on their own. IRP, license plate. Same deal there. Put them under yours. If they choose to have their own IRP account, which they absolutely can, if they want it to be portable, take it with them when they leave, you have to be listed as a carrier responsible for safety on their IRP permit. And they can do that by contacting their home state, and they can change that should they leave, whatever, and then provide you a copy that you have been removed as the carrier responsible for safety. Now, before I forget, should they ever terminate their contract or you terminate their contract, you need to provide a termination of contract letter stating the exact dates you're doing this, so that in case they run off with your permits and name on the side of the truck and do something stupid, you can come back and say, this contract was canceled 10 days ago, and I was not afforded the opportunity to remove my permits and vinyl, but they're doing this on their own, not under my name. So that's an important thing to remember. 2290. Now, you can accept 2290 with their name on it. It's okay. Or you can file it under your company name. I do not accept the 2290 from another company name, mostly for this point. They could cancel that 2290 and file for a refund under their own company, their old company, and you wouldn't know a thing about it. And then you would find out that, hey, this 2290 has not been paid, and get the permits revoked. So I always say, we're doing a 2290, and you could apply to get the money back on your old one, which you will get, but we're doing a new one just for that reason. The most probably important part of this is a contract. Now, this is my contract. I'm not willing to share it, partially because of the fact it cost me a lot of money to get this done, and I will not give it away for free. So we'll come back to that in a minute. That's a very important thing here. We'll go through some of the finer points of it and talk about that. Let's finish this first. Permit book, obviously, right here. You need to put together a permit book for the truck, and this is your permit book, your company, so you dictate what's in it and not in it. Then we can move on to the truck itself. Okay, vinyl. I want only my company name on there. Now, some people like to put the company name and then owned and operated by, or their name and then leased to. I want one name on that truck. For the simple fact that in today's day and age, with all the fraud, I'm not having a truck show up somewhere with two names on it. It's a good way to get flagged for fraud, and you can explain it away all you want, but that's in today's day and age, with highway and all that, I'm not looking to create any confusion or any additional reasons to flag somebody for fraud. You can pay for the vinyl, they can pay for the vinyl, however you want to work it out with yourself. Truck DOT inspection, same thing. It could be in their name or my company name. I'm not accepting one from another company name, although you could. You can't really cancel a DOT inspection, but who knows how it was done. If it's operating under my authority, I want a new DOT inspection with my name on it, because as a carrier, you are responsible. And then a toll device, as an owner operator, they're responsible for getting their own toll device. You could put them on theirs or on yours, and then do weekly deductions if you choose, but there's something you need to do with the contract that we'll come back to later. Insurance. So they need, as an owner operator, bobtail physical damage insurance. I require $1 million of liability. It's called non-trucking liability for their bobtail policy. That is when they are not hooked to a trailer. or under a load hooked to a trailer, that type of thing. And then their physical damage, if they're leasing the truck from you, you can dictate that amount. Otherwise, it's up to them. And then you need to add them as a driver to your trucking policy to cover primary liability and stuff like that. They're going to need an insurance certificate for their bobtail. I want to be listed as a certificate holder on that, or a named insured, so that if I'm going to get sued, I want to be somehow attached to that policy. So if I get notified if it gets canceled, you definitely want that. One thing I do is, with the bobtail policy, I have them own it. So I get with the insurance company, say call this driver, set him up with bobtail, and then set it up on auto pay with them, so I don't have to do a payroll deduction on that. Also, that makes it portable for them. It's much easier for them to, if they want to leave, they can keep that policy and go somewhere else, and then they own it, and I don't have to have anything to do with that. One of the things about bobtail as a carrier with your company trucks, you don't carry bobtail because the truck is always presumed to be under direction of the company. Okay, whether it's bobtail or hooked to a trailer or whatever. The bobtail is generally just for owner operators, somebody leasing on as an owner operator. When we come to like ELD, you can do that however you want. Who's going to pay for it? Provide them their ELD instructions, some paper logs for backup logs. Make sure they're compliant with that, just like you would a company driver. Drug testing. You still have to do all the same drug testing as you would an employee. So you need a pre-employment. You want to do this through whoever your consortium is, so that it's linked and shown that you did a pre-employment as part of that hiring process. So, and if you need to do it out of state, call your consortium, say, hey, I need to do a pre-employment drug test out of network, and then they can send a request to whatever facility you choose with a chain of custody. You want to use their chain of custody whenever possible, so that you get the proper credit for it with your consortium. You're responsible to make sure they have a negative pre-employment drug test. You want to query their drug and alcohol clearinghouse, query their previous employers, which some of that has gone away with the advent of the clearinghouse. And then once upon hire and passing of a pre-employment drug test, you need to add them to your consortium. And you need to have a company drug policy. If you are a carrier, you need to have a company drug and alcohol policy. You need to provide them with a copy of that policy. Now let's get to the DQ file, driver qualification file. It's much the same as an employee driver. Something a lot of places fail to do, and you must do it. You are required to do it. If they ever have an accident and you get sued, and the lawyer comes back and finds out that you never road tested this guy, your butt's going to be in a sling here. So a road test, and you got some road test forms. You can get any of these forms from like J.J. Keller, stuff like that. Road test them. You need an application in their DQ file. I put a copy of their driver's license, copy of the physical, their DMV record that you need to pull every year, copy of a list of 12 months of violations that you should fill out every year. That kind of got dropped here, but I still do it because I want it on record. Hours of service for the last 8 days prior to hire. Employment verifications that you went and did. You queried their previous employers for work history to verify active driving employment. Compliance with driver's license regulations they need to fill out that says I will only ever hold one driver's license at a time from one state. And I want to make sure that they uploaded their physical to the state. And I want a copy of the PSP results that you pulled prior to hire. You can do that. There's a website similar to the drug clearinghouse for pulling drivers' PSPs for their CSA points. You want to pull yourself a copy of that. Being that there will be no workers' comp insurance, there's a thing called occupational accident. It's somewhat of a substitute for that. It is not workers' comp insurance for self-employed people. It's just a policy of, hey, you get hurt on the job being a self-employed person. It's a policy that'll cover some things for you, give you some supplemental pay, some supplemental money for some different things. Is it a bad idea? I don't think it's a bad idea. It's relatively inexpensive. Ours is about $149 a month, and each policy is going to cover something different. So you'll have to look at all that. You cannot make them buy it through you, but you can make them buy it. So it's probably better if they get it through you. You're probably going to get a better discount through your insurance company, or maybe they're bringing a plan from another company they were with. That's all fine. I don't push it super hard. I offer it. I tell people, hey, this might be a good idea for you, but ultimately it's up to them. You should also have a driver manual for your company that lays out, your company policies, procedures, rules, information. Have a copy of that to give to them to sign off on. And then my insurance company came up with a thing. It's similar to like an AB5 test. It's a series of questions that determines whether or not you are an employee or an independent contractor. And they should be able to answer yes to all of these questions. So we fill that out. That goes in the DQ file also. You should have like an accident kit type scenario where you come up with some forms of, hey, if you have an accident, here's the numbers you call, here's the steps you take, here's pictures I want you to take, and some quick resources for that. Encourage them to take a lot of pictures. And then in that driver's manual, it should lay out your policies and procedures for accidents, what you want done, in addition to having some additional conversations about that. Now let's come back to this. What I think is probably the most important part of this whole thing is the contract or lease agreement. Go through just some basic parts of this of how it needs to work. So copies of this agreement, we should touch on each relevant paragraph that I think here. Copies of this agreement, you keep a copy, they keep a copy, and a copy must be in the truck. So I put a copy right in the permit book. If you're a leased on owner operator and you know what, you're required to carry a copy of this in the truck. In this, there's going to be a receipt for the equipment. You're going to identify the equipment by VIN number. Exclusive possession and control by carrier. So this is where this all gets shady with this owner operator and carrier thing. There's a clause in here for exclusive possession and control by carrier that says, while my name is on your equipment and you are under my insurance, you only run loads for me. You could get a broker load from JB Hunt or whatever, but you can't go and lease on to JB Hunt while you still got my name on the door. But then that conflicts directly with one of the AB5 things that says I can haul loads for other companies. Well, that is true, but what you would need to do first is remove our name from your door, change the carrier responsibility on your IRP plate, and get under their insurance. So it can be done, just people ignore those steps in between. Okay. Identification of the equipment, we already talked about that. You need to identify the equipment with the vinyl and the name and all that and the numbers. Status of independent contractor, we talked about that with you being a independent contractor with that, mostly with that questionnaire that you answer all the questions. Compensation to contractor, there's a section here that's going to lay out exactly what the compensation is to the contractor. You need to make sure you have that in there. It lays out when and in what manner, in what time frame contractors get paid, and then the documentation supporting that payment. So you need to identify how are you determining what you are using for the rate that you're going to pay it. I just put the entire gross amount for the load, including line haul, surcharge, whatever accessorial pay that there is. Inspection of carriers tariffs. I have tariffs in the back of my permit books that stay in there. They are really of no meaning or value. It's kind of a legal thing should you ever go to court. And then it lays out the expenses incurred in operating equipment. Who bears what expenses? You need that clearly defined. Base plates, we already talked about that. They can have yours, they can have theirs, and how to do it. Purchase of items from carrier. So because a person is leased onto you as a contractor, you cannot legally make them purchase anything through you. And you need to disclose that in your contract. Now we always have the discussion, hey, I can't make you, but sometimes it might be in your best interest. If you need tires, your carrier is going to get you a better deal than if you just go down to the local tire shop most times. If fuel, they're probably going to give you a fuel card. You're probably better off getting your plate through them and your IFTA. So can't make you, but it's probably better for you to do that. And then chargebacks. So anything that the carrier is going to deduct from the settlement of the contractor needs to be specifically itemized on a page that we'll get to later. But here you have to disclose chargebacks and what they can be. Loss and damage claims. So because they're now a business owner, not a company driver, you have certain business obligations. One of them is part of loss and damage. So if there's a deductible on the cargo insurance plan that they're responsible, you need to disclose that type of thing. Fines, for speeding, overweight, whatever various fines you can be, you need to lay out in a section here about who's responsible for which fines. Here we come back to the fuel tax. We already talked about IFTA. They can have their own account. There's a section here that they got to check a box if they want to have their own IFTA account. There's a section about carrier's insurance coverage and insurance provided by contractor. It needs to be very specific who bears the cost of which insurance. The carrier is required to provide and bear the cost of public liability insurance, which is the primary liability. That is the most expensive coverage in trucking here, typically. And then, the contract we already went through it, bobtail, physical damage, any other kind of, supplemental insurances, cargo, who's going to pay the cargo, you can have a conversation on that. I have an indemnity clause in my contract that says we agree not to financially harm each other by representing the other company in a negative light. So there's no slander or libel or anything like that. If we have a disagreement, we move on. But if we damage each other somehow, we have an agreement here on how it's going to be handled. Being that the person is a contractor, owner operator, there's cost involved, right? If they agree to a load, get halfway through the load and break down or whatever have you, and you have to go recover that load. There's a section here and lays out that they have to bear part of the cost of you recovering that load. If it was your company truck, you're getting the financial benefit of going and recovering that load. Whereas if they're a contractor, a financial benefit largely falls on them. So if you want to have something about that type of situation, it needs to be in here in a contract. So basically, if I have to pay somebody, like if John Bake breaks down on his way to Florida, 100 miles from here, halfway to Florida, 900 miles, whatever, and I have to send a truck to recover that load, he has to bear a portion of that expense to send another truck to get it. Especially if it's another contractor. I can't double pay on the load, right? If it's an employee, though, that cost can be, I can bear a lot more of that cost. Escrow account. If you choose to have an escrow account, you need to lay out the details in here of how much, what that money's for, what that money can be used for, if you're going to pay interest on it, when you're going to pay it back, when you release that money, how the person can withdraw that money. That needs to be a clause in here. You need to provide a section here where if you have to serve each other notice, here's where you serve the contractor, here's where the contractor would serve you. Effective date and duration of agreement. You can make it ongoing, you can make it month to month, you can make it a year, you can do whatever you want to do within the law. If you're financing equipment, there can be contingency in here that could refer to a lease agreement you have between you and them. Here we got the section here where this is the receipts for the equipment that you're leasing on. You need to identify them by VIN number and a description of the vehicle. We have the part here where we deal with compensation. It needs to be clearly. The more clearly you lay this out, the better for both of you. We come to that page for chargebacks, where this would be a section here you could use if you were lease purchasing them equipment or whatever. It would contain the amount to be financed, the interest rate, total amount of interest. You pretty much have to disclose everything like as if you were loaning somebody money. Total amount owed, the frequency of the payment, and the payment schedule. If there's a balloon payment, whatever. And also to this, if I was to do that, I would go online and print out an amortization schedule so that if they know if they want to pay that equipment off early, here's based on me having made this payment, here's the amount that I owe. That's good for everybody. It's more transparent, and people know exactly where they're at all times, and you can hold each other accountable for that. Now, if you're doing some kind of deal where it don't matter if you pay it off early, you pay the same amount, you got to figure that out, of how to disclose all that. Here is another page for the chargebacks. Okay, so we put on here fuel, weekly, as I just put as incurred, and then your base plate, your IFTA. Now here's where you got to get specific with some or leave some things open-ended. So, if you get toll violations in the mail because they ran a toll or their toll device wasn't working, you have to be able to charge that back to them out of their settlement. But if you don't put that in here, that you can hold back for toll violations, you can't do it. You can't take that stuff out of their settlement you did not agree to ahead of time. So you need to put toll violations, tires, maintenance, fees, anything. If they could buy tires from you, if they got, you will use one of your charge accounts at Freightliner. Say, I need to be able to deduct that back. If you have a monthly charge for Qualcomm or whatever, or a toll device, right? It all needs to go on here. Also, one thing, when somebody leaves, if you're intending to charge them a cleaning fee for the truck, or if they abandon the truck and you're trying to charge a recovery fee, if you do not have these things in the contract, you cannot do that. Whether or not you should, that's completely up to you. I'm just trying to stress that anything you can possibly think of that you guys agree on for being able to charge back needs to be in there. And fees for recovering trucks they largely don't hold up, and when it goes, to the state labor board or whatever, but that's neither here nor there. And then there's just a section in here about fuel and base plates, about it's the amount I pay. It's not getting marked up. So at the end of every week, they'll get a settlement for their fuel card that shows, here's what you bought for fuel. That's the exact amount that's coming out with no markup. Here's that statement of independent contractor status. You can answer all these questions, yes, you're good to go. And I had this vetted and verified by the insurance company here. So that helps, prevent the stupid stuff that's going on in California. So anyway, this contract part is really important. So I wanted to, we didn't even come close to going through everything, but we touched on a lot of the different things that should be in the contract. Now also that, like I said, state specific. Different things are state specific. So spend the money, get a transportation attorney to draft a contract for you. It protects both parties. And it's not because you're trying to screw the contractor or contractor's trying to screw you. Things can get messy. You just need them. Just be clear ahead of time. And then as far as paying them, you don't need a formal payroll service because you're not doing withholding of taxes and FICA and all that stuff. I just come up with a Excel spreadsheet where you put in the formula of, if you're paying them on percentage, here's the amount, and then it's whatever percentage of that, and put the formulas in. Make sure you get a W-9 from them, for tax purposes. Keep it in their file. Other than that, it's not really complicated. You are no longer legally required to send a 1099 at the end of every year. So you can. Doesn't mean you can't. You absolutely can. Or you could just provide a year-end summary and say, hey, here's what you made. Here's what your fuel came out and whatever. They should really be, everybody wants to be, I'm independent, I'm an owner operator, but they don't want to do their own record keeping, do they? Most people don't keep very good records. So hey, the onus is on them to do some record keeping. You're in business, and act like it. So I'll provide what information I have, but ultimately it's up to you to keep your own good records. Some good resources for some of these different forms, just pretty much JJ Keller. They're going to have all the forms that you need as far as like the for the DQ file and things like that. Not so much the contract. I wish I could help you more on that, but it's all personalized to my company, and I have a lot tied up in that, so I'm not really willing to share that. And plus, you would have to go and totally adapt it to your state and company anyway. So just contact us, the transportation attorney. It's not outrageously ridiculous to get a contract drawn up for yourself. Or if you have a buddy in the same state, take a look at theirs and see if you're happy with it. Have a lawyer, pay a couple $100 to a lawyer to look it over. That's going to be it for now. I hope this helps somebody. If you have more questions, within reason, email me, adam@diysemi.com. I'll try to answer you as best I can. I cannot do for free, at least anyway, detailed counseling sessions. It's just time is a thing. So everybody take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.